Well, hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. It's a pleasure to have you all with us today for that live talk we're organizing on competitive intelligence in the AI era. I must say I'm super excited to start because we have Paul Santilli with us here today, who is maybe one of the most eminent figures when it comes to CI we could meet with. Currently CEO and board chair member of the strategic and competitive intelligence professionals to discuss this vast and exciting subject. So hi, Paul, how are you?
Thank you, Paula. I'm doing well. Thank you. How are you today?
I'm doing super well. Awesome. Thanks.
Excellent.
Before we jump in, I'll just give you a quick introduction about myself. So my name is Paula. As you can see, we've decided to keep things simple for today's session. Paul and Paula. Couldn't get better than that. And I'm customer success manager at ReportLinker, so AI-powered intelligence platform. And we hope that with today's talk, we'll give you actionable insights and ideas that will help you with intelligence projects to come. I'm more than eager to get Paul's view on this and the subjects we're about to talk about today and the intelligence world as a whole. So Paul, can you tell us a bit more about yourself?
Thank you, Paula. Yes. Hi, everyone. Pleasure to be here. I'm very honored to be part of this and doing this this talk here with ReportLinker. So my background, of course, you can link in with me on LinkedIn, of course, to see all the gruesome details, I guess. But I've come from a long history in the technology sector, many years at Hewlett-Packard and Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. And then I had about 10 years at Apple prior to that, and then a number of other different high-tech roles. But my responsibilities have been primarily in product development and intelligence around customer insights and product launches and new product development, as I mentioned. The whole basis, though, by how I made this journey to the role that I'm in now is really kind of, in retrospect, really understanding those organizations that I had some leadership control over and the basis by which the development of knowledge and insight to address customer needs in the best way possible was really the impetus behind a lot of my responsibilities. And when you translate that in today's world, it's all about the insights and intelligence you gather from your product set and your behavior of your company and your customer needs to be a better partner with your customer base, in a sense, derivative of the whole CI approach to growing your business. So this sort of history and background that I've experienced over the many years have really, I think, prepared me and equipped me with the right frame of mind to really take what I believe one of the best organizations out there around the intelligence sector to take this SCIP organization really into the next steps of 21st century intelligence behavior.
Great. That's awesome, Paul. Thank you. I'm really looking forward to going into this deep dive with you when it comes to competitive intelligence and intelligence as a whole, and especially associated to the concept of artificial intelligence. It's true that today's challenging environment requires business leaders to build resilience, to grow not only to survive, but also to thrive, right? And to that end, intelligence is exceptionally important. Just before we start, you'll see that we have a little poll running for that webinar, because we have observed that for the past 12 months, there has been a real shift in the amount of resources that organizations are ready to allocate to those intelligence subjects. And we would really love to have your opinion on that. From your position, do you think that more resources are allocated or not? Is there a status quo compared to the world as we've known it before? So we'll definitely go through this with you and address the answers to these questions afterward. And since we're talking about questions, another thing, you'll see that on your Zoom reader, there's a Q&A section where we'll see your questions coming in. So please do not hesitate as Paul and myself talk about these more than interesting subjects. And if we can't answer them as we go or during this session, we'll make sure to come back to you and give you the answers or insights that are relevant to your interrogations. All right, so let's get ready to dive. Paul, so my first question for you today, so as we're talking about yourself, your background, SCIP as well, why not open on a broad question about competitive intelligence today? And what are the main trends? What is the CI world doing? What should we be wary about?
So, traditionally speaking, the whole CI moniker and the competitive intelligence aspect, if you look back years ago, when this was really being developed in the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and so forth, it was somewhat focused area. Competitive intelligence meant just that. How do you acquire the skills and the knowledge and the intelligence around being able to compete better with your competitor, and to offer a better solution for your customer base and grow your business. But what I think is this moniker, this naming convention around competitive intelligence has really expanded, especially in the 21st century and in the fourth industrial revolution platforms. This is really something now. It's becoming much more broad, much more complex, much more robust in its nature. And the way I look at it, it's really what I call the intelligence ecosystem. All of those things related to the intelligence aspect. And with intelligence, you can't ignore intelligence without data. And now that we've come to an era where we have this big data and IoT and all of these things associated with the onslaught of this data revolution that we're all trying to manage ourselves within. What goes hand in hand with all of that data is the intelligence that can be extracted from it. So in my opinion, intelligence is really edgeless, it's universal, it's pervasive throughout all aspects of organizations and society as a whole. So when you really look at the intelligence platform, the intelligence scoping of things, it's really all inclusive now, especially again in the 21st century with the big data aspect, but more importantly with how organizations have now realized that these activities of these high disruption activities like COVID, for example, has really put a lot of stress and a lot of challenges on organizations to better manage their data, hence to have better intelligence ecosystems within their organizations to be able to derive intelligence and to derive insights to grow their business during and after a major disruption activity like COVID. So I think the definition of intelligence and CI has really blossomed into something much more large than we originally intended. And I think it's definitely the right direction that we need to go to really embrace this whole intelligence concept rather than trying to brace against the growth of this data revolution.
Great, that's awesome. And in a way, Paul, so you were talking about the fact that intelligence concerns everyone today, right? In an organization, it's not just the CI team for the CI team, but everyone can be affected, be it marketing, product teams, business development teams, strategic teams, even legal teams when you think about it. But how do you get everyone to sit around that topic and the different challenges that come with it and kind of group global organization around global intelligence, around an organization's challenges?
Yeah, so this is a common question that's been around for many, many years. And the challenge we have as practitioners is really around making the intelligence DNA pervasive within a corporate culture. If I can maybe put it in that simplistic term, what I'm trying to say by that is how do we instill this as an intelligence driver to the strategy or of the organization? And this gets into the development of the organizational structure, the flat organization, the less levels to have decision making being done, and the ownership and driving of the C-suite organization. So when you have your intelligence that can be driven into that level of the organization to be part of the strategy, that's where you really see a lot of changes in companies. And you really see a lot of what we call this digital transformation elements happening within organizations. And it's clearly a differentiator. There's reports that I've seen and I've written about that talk about the digital divide. Those organizations that have intelligence systems that are embraced by the C-suite and the decision makers of the organizations are by far much further advanced than organizations that don't have that sort of direct line of sight from an intelligence to an execution function. So that in itself, I think, is a huge organizational attribute that needs to be exploited amongst organizations. I mean, you really need to have this intelligence function driven into the C-suite decision makers for your strategy to be successful.
Great, thanks, Paul. I do have another question to address that because, okay, knowing the influence and the different contacts that you have in that intelligence sphere and world, do you see any trends from vendors or professionals you're in contact with in that space that help spread intelligence towards or within an organization, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Paula. Thanks. So the main points around that is really how are we managing today's challenges in this highly tumultuous, high data-driven environment that we're all faced with. And you cannot do this without the management and usage of AI, artificial intelligence. You need to have these tools in your AI or in your CI practitioner toolbox in order to be able to be effective, because you need these tools to not only for the acquisition elements and the analytics elements, but you need it also for deriving those insights, as I call the golden nuggets, out of that vast amounts of noise out there that you can then actually utilize to drive a strategy. So the AI aspect and the tools around AI are really instrumental in being able to deliver that sort of insight for execution.
Well, that's great. Super insightful, Paul. Thank you very much. And actually, this drives me to another question I have for you, because now that we have kind of an idea of the trends and where organizations and teams need to go in order to embrace, that intelligence culture, if we could talk about it in those terms, what are the technologies that the intelligence world could use today, and how these technologies can be implemented in organizations to help them with those tasks?
Another great question, and this comes to mind with some of the most recent things that have been hidden in the AI news of current. Around generative AI, you've heard of ChatGPT and DALL-E and DeepMind and all of these sorts of extension capabilities around getting to this point by which AI is emulating human behavior and human thought and so forth and so on, and that singularity aspect associated with all of this. So great discussion topics and great stuff that is evidence of the progress that AI has made. But, the whole intent around AI, if you want to call it artificial intelligence, I like to refer to it, and I've seen this also published in other journals, but you call it artificial usefulness. It's really around the usefulness of this content that's being generated and how it applies to an organization. There's really two areas that I see as being instrumental. One is really, again, around deciphering the veracity or the truthfulness of the content that's being generated, because as you know, with anything AI generates, it's garbage in, garbage out. I mean, AI is going to utilize all of the knowledge that it pertains or that it gathers from a vast amounts of sources. So it's all about the narrative around those sources. So you've got the accuracy of the AI modeling as a whole. Secondly, you have to really focus on the narrative, how it sells, and how you able to invoke the action that's derived from these intelligence-derived AI. So it's really understanding what's the narrative around that. How do you employ a storyline in order for organizations to start executing upon and start putting a plan in place for their growth? So it's really utilizing that sort of two concepts that I just painted, but also as part of the AI tool. I mentioned about acquisition and analytics, but you really have to look at the future scenario planning elements. With 5 years ago, nobody would have expected how COVID could have impacted, even the ongoing aspect of having COVID in the first place. So everyone's 5-year plans went out the window, right? It was obviously not something that would ever materialize. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying you got to plan for all these other sort of global pandemics that may occur, but my point is saying that utilizing AI tools to help you do a vast multitude of different scenario planning based upon these early warning signals that you might get from your technology or from the vertical market application, these signals that will help you identify where there could be some noise happening that you might need to put together some scenario planning around. So that element that I'm referring to is more around the predictive nature of AI, which is another component that's very important. However, one of the other things that a lot of people leave off of their intelligence value chain, so to speak, is the fact that once you have the predictive nature of it, you have to have what's called prescriptive nature. Not only saying what's going to happen, but what you should do about it. And that's a much more challenging piece, because these could be things that could be maybe within the core competencies of your organization, but many times they're not within the core competencies of your organization. You have to make some decisions around how you can augment your product and services portfolio to accommodate some of these changes that you might see coming down the road, which leads itself to having organizations that are much more nimble and flexible in its manufacturing and services capabilities. So as you can probably tell, there's a lot of different chains of discussion that we can go down, work streams of discussion that we can have around this topic, which we could probably do many seminars around, many webinars around. But my whole point is that you have to really look at this ecosystem and understand how AI can help you gather more knowledge and better knowledge to make some decisions within your organization.
That's great. And I love the perspectives you're giving us on predictive versus prescriptive, and the fact that you have to implement those technologies, and talking about technologies, thinking about AI as well, into narratives, guessing those scenarios, being able to do some predictions around signals, stuff like that. I love the idea. And it is true that it's something that we're dealing on the day-to-day basis with ReportLinker as well, working with our different pools of clients and use cases. And it's all about, how do we anticipate? How can we know that someone is moving, or what signal are we looking into? And it is true that we're talking about hard technology, data, and data is only good as the input, right? But what do we do? And talking about scenario planning, actually, there are famous tools in the CI community, such as I'm thinking about battle cards, war games, even scenario planning tools. And to you, what are the hot concepts that you guys at SCIP are training the community on? What's hot? Like, what's the up and running?
Yeah.
What do you need to know?
You know what, that's a great question, because we being the SCIP repository of those things that are intelligence based and intelligence knowledge, what I call a body of knowledge really around the intelligence offerings. We have a full spectrum of different sort of behaviors. So we get a lot of folks coming in that are, really understanding, almost how to spell CI, to that elementary level of, the fundamentals. And then we have the other people really looking at one of the major challenges we've seen is really how to take that intelligence knowledge and drive it into the organization. So it becomes, and this is the challenge I always have for the teams I've managed in the past, is that the knowledge and the intelligence you generate have to be must-haves rather than nice-to-haves. Because if they're must-haves, they're a vital component of the organizational value chain, right? It's a vital component to the growth of the organization. If it's a nice-to-have, well, there's not a lot of value there, and that's expendable, right? Yeah. So the challenge as from a CI community, intelligence community, is really around how do you get your information to become much more of a must-have, and how to drive that into the executive leadership strategy development. And that's a lot of the questions that we've been seeing at SCIP, and that we're addressing. We've had several best practices and use cases that really amplify exactly how organizations have been successful in doing these things via various methods and techniques and behaviors and processes. As a matter of fact, at our upcoming IntelliCon, and I've got to make a plug for IntelliCon.
Go for it.
We have our IntelliCon event in Arizona on April 17th. If you haven't signed up, you got to sign up now. But at that event, we have a number of different solution providers, as well as organizations, practitioners that have been successful in putting together these sorts of capabilities around driving the intelligence in the executive decision makers, and having that success is played out in their organizational growth. So that is a long answer to a very succinct question, and I apologize for that. But nonetheless, I cannot fully answer the question without talking about maybe the full spread of the sorts of things that we're dealing with in our training and certification curriculum. So again, folks, check it out, scip.org, and you'll see all the things that we offer.
Yeah, I really recommend you to go there today. And even if you can't fly out to Arizona, and you will have awesome talks and content to go into. And I'll myself be plugged in and looking into what's happening out there.
Excellent. Thank you.
Actually, I'm thinking about it, that we're talking about AI so much and transitioning to technology, but intelligence is not that recent of a concept, right? When you consider GPT-3, I mean, a year ago, 2 years ago, it wasn't even there. It was gathering that field information, having, your ears on the ground plugged in, what is happening towards my competitors, different players on the market. And you had to get, that information in such a way that sounds nearly impossible today. But it's good to see that organizations are skipping the beat and coming up to speed when it comes to integrating new solutions and new technologies to get there. which is giving me some window to talk about that poll that we launched at the beginning of that webinar. And we're seeing that from the results, 53% of you attendees are actually part of organizations that are allocating more resources to intelligence. So is it for technology? Is it for anything else? We'll be super down to explore these with you. And for 30%, no change, but we're seeing a general trend towards, yeah, we need to get there. We need to stay ahead on the curve. And it's such an empowerment to have those CI processes and technologies behind a company to empower growth that I must say, I'm not surprised about these results. And actually, this gives me also another perspective, Paul, now that we're talking about it. But, you know, we've been mentioning AI quite a lot, but I know that not everyone is wary or as enthusiastic as we can be when it comes to implementing it and trusting it as a whole. And this is where I would like your reaction and maybe perspectives on today is, where do organizations or where do teams need to draw that line in the sand when it comes to what can the AI do for me, and when do we still need human intervention for that decision making? Right?
Yeah, no, that's a very hot topic right now. You mentioned the one word, trust, and it really talks about the veracity and the usefulness, and you've heard the terminology. It's been very common these days about fake news and fake information and all of that, the things associated with that. So AI is again going to be a tool that collects and disseminates information based upon its learnings, based upon its volume of content that it's pulling in to make these sort of decisions. So it's the content it's pulling in, it's the accuracy based. And there's a whole nother talk that I give around truthfulness in data and how fact-based data is not necessarily that which society is based on and that gets the most stickiness in society. It's usually around a narrative that gets the most voice and the most engine behind the narrative that is the version that gets the most stickiness in society. So what I'm trying to say here is that AI being a tool that collects and manages the information, but it's the information integrity itself that really counts. So you know all about AI and deep fakes, for example, and you put different people and fictitious people that come around and through the generative AI processes, you can have fake individuals talking about a narrative that may not even exist and it's completely made up. So this sort of platform that's questionable, that can infiltrate the usefulness of the AI data, CI intelligence, is something to be concerned about. So this gets us back into the ethics around AI and about the responsibilities around AI. And it really leads us to start thinking about, and this is why you've seen this recent news about 1,000 technology individuals writing a letter to these AI organizations telling them to take a pause, right? The 6-month pause about, hey, we need to make sure that AI is not going in a direction that we can't manage. And to that point, you need to have the management and the understanding of responsibility. You have to have the understanding of the ethics associated with it. Now, I personally think we may be beyond that point of no return in some ways by thinking that it's already well known in the social platforms, social world, how AI has taken off, and there's a lot of places AI is going that was never intended to be gone by the people who generated the algorithm in the first place. So there's some risks there. AI is almost it's utilizing its own behavior to go off in directions that maybe weren't originally intended. So we as intelligence professionals, the counsel I give or the direction I give to individuals is really to look at AI as just another data set, and don't rely on your entire outcome to be based only on one data set. So you have to triangulate, you have to encourage and other sources of content that could substantiate or maybe not substantiate the findings that maybe an AI generated outcome might provide you. So the ability here to really triangulate, utilize different methods and technologies and models to ensure that the information you're having is the kind of information you should be acting upon, rather than one that maybe a competitor is encouraging you to act upon that isn't true at all, which I've seen out there as well. So there's a lot of challenges in this space, and it's an evolving world in that aspect. And I think getting more understanding and better tools and better knowledge around the intelligence ecosystem, as I call it, and the players and the mechanisms and processes that we use in order to better equip us with the right information, I think is really one of the things that we as practitioners have to really focus on, being more equipped and more rounded skill sets and understanding this intelligence ecosystem and seeing how they all play together. Great,
that's super interesting. And talking about trust and also that triangulation that people and teams and CI professionals need to be wary about, shouldn't be in a way the role of vendors, AI vendors, I'm thinking about, to make sure the AI they're giving to people is safe and give guarantees? What are your perspectives on this, for example?
Yeah, well, there's no guarantees to that. I mean, it's all in the perfect world, that would be the ideal situation. But this gets back into discussions around AI replacing humans and so forth and so on. And in my opinion, at least in the intelligence space, it's still going to be a very tightly knit complementary relationship between AI generated content and human intelligence. You have to have that human interface still, from a contextual perspective, understanding how the context of the intelligence and how the information is being generated, how the usefulness of it to really come about, how to drive that narrative I spoke of earlier about making it actionable, especially when you're taking into consideration the other level of the other dimension of perpetual disruption, the COVID type stuff, or maybe the local disruptions you might have, organizations on strike, or your delivery trucks have supply chain issues, or whatever the case might be. Those human intelligence elements need to play a part in the overall intelligence strategy you have. And you can't rely just upon the AI element, for example. So that human part is a critical component that I think will still be around for quite a while, in my opinion, and it helps to bring relevancy and context to the whole intelligence value chain.
Great. And I have another question for you on that. I'm sorry, I'll just keep coming, but I'm so excited.
Please, no problem.
Thinking about trust, we're also talking about trust and distrust, and I know some organizations don't want to rely on AI to progress. And do you think it's still possible today, in a world where technologies revolving around artificial intelligence are developing so fast and making intelligence teams' jobs so much seamless and less tedious in a way, that there will end up being a difference between organizations using AI for their intelligence tasks and organizations that refuse to get up to speed?
I absolutely am convinced that you need to have an AI set of tools in your toolbox in order to process and digest today's volume of information. Without that, you are shortchanging yourself, and you're leaving a lot of data on the table that could be critical to your success. So the importance of using AI overall is unquestioned, in my opinion. You have to have that, because there's no other way possible. In the old days, the way you would process information around markets, industry, competitors, so forth and so on, was either through published journals, or back in the days when we would go to libraries and pull books out and research for your library. That obviously has gone by the wayside. Unfortunately, a lot of our processes still behave in that manner. But utilizing tools today with this onslaught of data that we have is the only way to be able to gather the insights, intelligence from that. It's the process, as I say, getting the golden nuggets out of all of this noise, especially when you utilize social as a platform to gather information from. And there's a ton of relevant information in the business context in social that people don't realize. So that's a whole nother discussion we can have at a later time.
That's great. No, I'll be more than happy to hear your advice on this. And but that's great. And I must say, great insights. And working at Report Linker, I can only agree with what you're saying. I mean, when we see our different users transitioning from AI-free intelligence processes to what we can put in their hands, and the way they can leverage AI to go through that noise and work through, understanding context, seeing those signals, maybe even apprehending some perspectives that they didn't have in mind. I mean, a signal can be anything from a news, an event, something disrupting a market, but consider sentiment behind that. I mean, how do you apprehend sentiment without the biasness of the human subjective vision of it? AI can do that.
Absolutely.
I find it
Yes.
myself as working as a young professional in that sphere, I find it breathtaking as well. And I love to see the difference that it can make for those teams.
Excellent. Yes.
Which gives me another perspective is how are we envisioning the future of intelligence now? I mean, we have AI in our hands. We were talking about the way processes existed in the past. We're talking about narratives. We're talking about risk as well. But how do we stay prepared for what's coming for us?
Yeah, so that's a dangerous question. The reason why I say that is because there are many different facets we have to take in consideration. So let me start off first by really talking about the scope of the intelligence ecosystem as I talk about. You know, I look at by definition, data can drive intelligence, and because data is universal and pervasive, intelligence needs to be universal and pervasive. And you know, I refer to it as the democratization of intelligence. It needs to be inclusive in all different organizations across everything. And how do we get to that point? Well, you know, the data is already being generated in all that space. We need to have the tools like AI to be able to pull the intelligence in that space. We need to democratize this intelligence to make it in everyone's toolbox, not just in the practitioner's toolbox or maybe on some central database, but it needs to be in everyone's toolbox such that we get to a point in the future that everyone can utilize a collective amongst the intelligence community to drive, you know, these behaviors. And you need to, you know, couple that with a dimension of organizational preparedness and organizational structure that allows the organization to be able to be nimble and fluid enough to make those sorts of course corrections. They might be organizational or maybe departmental dependent. So some departments are going in a direction that's complementary to the overall intelligence strategy, while other departments are not, based upon, again, the complementary nature. So my point to answering that question is really, it's going to get more complex, not simpler. But our tools need to get more sophisticated, but there's going to be a lot more variables around, as we talked about, the trust and the usefulness of the information. How do we perform, or how do we generate the narrative for us to put together an execution around this intelligence findings? It's the ability to really manage this and try to get in front of it is going to be challenging. But I strongly believe that the ongoing tool development is one way to really be able to at least manage and harness the content. We as practitioners need to really focus on how do we deliver and execute upon that content in a way that is still relevant to the time that it occurs. Another point we haven't talked much about, but certainly a huge discussion element, is the timing, you know, the time to insights and the time to execution. The world is changing so fast and so quickly with this data onslaught happening, you know, by the second. The intelligence gathered a week ago is not going to be relevant in today's society because the world's changed, you know, many times. So you have to try to drive this intelligence ecosystem and the value that you get from all of this as close to the time by when the event happens as possible, as near to real time as possible. Now, realistically speaking, that's not something you can do, but the idea of trying to put an organizational structure in place that allows you to execute as close as possible to when the event occurred or when you gather the information is one that's relevant. It's going to be more and more important in the future. So it's a tangential discussion point, but it's critically important in understanding this whole intelligence and execution ecosystem that I keep referring to.
Okay, awesome, Paul. Thank you very much. There is one last thing that I would like to address.
Yes.
Timeliness, I know you were like, okay, we forgot timeliness, but talk about trust, talk about bias, talking about usefulness. We've mentioned ethics as well, but I would like to know your perspectives on the question of sustainability applied to CI, or maybe that more global intelligence conception that we're slowly moving towards. What are your views on this?
Wow, Paula, awesome. I'm so glad you brought this up, because this is one of our SCIP's future core competencies that we want to really amplify in our SCIP value chain. And it deals with utilizing the intelligence information and utilizing that intelligence to drive sustainability and social responsibility issues. And that, I think, is something that we as an intelligence community can have a tremendous impact on local, regional, and global issues in that space. And that's something that I encourage everybody who's listening to this conversation to reach out and let's talk more about how we can utilize intelligence to drive the sustainability and social responsibility initiative. That's something that's going to be dear to my heart from a SCIP perspective. We're going to definitely put things in place and have partnerships. As a matter of fact, we have a partnership going on right now that'll be showcased in the Telecon. But your point is incredibly critical and relevant, and I'm glad you brought it up. So I think it's very, very important for us as intelligence professionals to work in that direction as a whole. So thank you for bringing that up.
Of course, no problem, Paul, my pleasure. Talk about Intellicon, the future of CI, of course, will be part of the focuses, but what are you guys really cooking up for us? We need a bit of bread here. I need some crumbs. What will be happening? Any speaker or topic that you want to tell us about?
Well, every topic I think is very relevant. We've got a tremendous amount of inputs in terms of people who wanted to speak, and we go through the pool of resources that people have contributed to. And, as always, we get such a great turnout of the speakers and the sponsors and our keynote community. So the only thing I can really talk about other than what's listed already on the website is the fact that this event is really going to be talking a lot about these future considerations. How do we deal with these sorts of challenges that we're experiencing, and what is the future of CI looking like from a practitioner standpoint? We've got some great solution providers who have got some novel tools utilizing AI in the space. So there's a lot of great things that'll be happening in that. And this is just the beginning. This isn't a one and done. My future vision of SCIP is this is going to be a balloon blowing up in the sense that we're going to be having other events in other locations around the world, multiple locations around the world. We're going to be reaching out and establishing partnerships with enterprise, corporate, academic, and even government entities to be part of this SCIP ecosystem. So this is something we're going to be really engaging on a global scale and enlarging our value prop to our member and sponsor community. So, just as a point of reference, I highly recommend folks to listen to what's happening in Telecon and understanding and reaching out and connecting with myself to be a part of the SCIP ecosystem that I think we can really make some changes in the intelligence space on a global scale. So I'm super excited about it, as you can probably tell.
Yeah, I know. And as you were talking there, I was thinking about what we were saying, one of these questions on how to make intelligence global at the scale of an organization. And I just love the fact that as SCIP, you also want that to be applied to a higher level or even more macro level. It's not just companies working through their competition today, but having those academics, universities, and all organizations that are concerned by intelligence around the table, and to be able to see the future of it. And I find it breathtaking that you're.
And it's really around the establishment of how do organizations use data for business growth, and you use data to drive intelligence, which you get insights that grows your business, that creates outcomes that grows your business. That's your intelligence value chain. So when you have executives that are looking about how do I take everything that all this data I've been collecting through a COVID environment, and how do I grow my business? We want to be that hub of solution providers and of talent and of thought leadership that can help these organizations build on their digital transformation needs and build on their data first needs and show them how to create this sort of growth ecosystem within their organization as a whole. So that's the sort of outreach and knowledge set that I want to have SCIP to acquire to address these executive needs, in addition to keeping all of the goodness we have around our practitioner and academic communities that we provide today.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Thanks for this. Anything that you would like to add on SCIP or maybe this conversation? Because I'm seeing lots of questions coming in, and I must say I'm impatient to go to that part. But do you have any outro that you have for us?
Well, real quickly, because I want to leave time for the questions, but real quickly, I just, I think this is an extremely exciting time in the intelligence community. I've made a big change in my career direction to be taking over this role in the SCIP community, and I wouldn't feel passionate about this, or I wouldn't have taken this role if I didn't feel passionate about this. So I strongly believe this is an environment that we can definitely make some changes on a global scale, and I encourage everyone to reach out and get a hold of me and be part of this community as a whole.
Perfect. Thanks, Paul. Thanks for everything.
Thank
you. So insightful. I mean, I'm super excited, and it's already the end, I must say, but we do have some questions, and
Of
one
course.
of them I am not surprised to have at all. It's what are your thoughts on how GPT will influence CI processes? And I do have a bit of insights because it is a topic, a really hot topic actually, that we have at Report Linker, and we're doing loads of experimentations around how we can implement GPT, sorry. And what we have observed so far is that GPT can be a very powerful tool for CI when it's combined with a platform that can be specialized in economic and market-related content, with also those algorithms that are trained on specific corpuses. It can help spot the right content for you in the blink of an eye. And the combination of both can definitely produce CI deliverables in a very efficient and accurate way. Talk about timeliness again, I think that it can be very powerful. Do you have any perspectives on this? I know GPT can be kind of tedious talk or slippery topic, maybe?
Yeah. No, I think the word you said was combination. Don't rely don't rely all of your analysis on one data point, one source of content, or one narrative. So that combination of the other stuff that you're talking about regarding the different technology and marketing strategies and things like that. And as I say, triangulate your data. ChatGPT is a great tool, very cool. God, I wish I had it in school back in the day. Well, for another reasons, but aside from that, no, it's another source of content, and you just need to temper that with other content sources to legitimize the outcome. And I think this is all still in the right direction, but there's that human intelligence aspect that we cannot deny from this equation. And I think it's going in the right direction. We just need to make sure we temper it appropriately.
Perfect. Thanks, Paul. We do also have a question from Greg here, who is asking us, what are the most prominent uses in retail for competitive intelligence?
In retail applications, well, you should go to Intellicon. There's a lot of retail applications, useful use cases, what's what I'm trying to say, in that space. But that could be a conversation we can have offline, Greg. I'd be more than happy to share my thoughts on that. But on the surface, it's obviously in terms of route to market, channel support, distribution support, competitor offerings, timeliness of your offerings, new products and services in the B2C space. There's many different things we can explore there. So there's a lot of stuff that we can set up and do some double clicks on. But that's for the purpose of this time. Otherwise, we need another 2 hours on this call to really talk about it in detail. Hopefully, at least this kind of whets your appetite, and we can maybe have a conversation more about a lot of these areas I just mentioned.
Great. Well, thanks. Thanks, Paul, on that. I do have another one here on, okay, the question is, my company has decided to allocate more resources to CI. Any recommendations to set up a powerful process? Where should I start?
Oh, wow. Another 2-hour conversation.
That's a long one, yeah.
Well, you need to really focus on these major areas: the acquisition, the analytics, the insights, and the execution toward a business outcome. That's essentially summed up the intelligence value chain. So you need to make sure you have, you utilize the tools for a lot of the heavy lifting stuff, the acquisition and analytics, as I talk about AI, but it's that intelligence, insights, and execution aspects that would probably need the most human interfaces around. So you'd want to judge your resource model accordingly based upon what you can automate and what you still need a human interface. More importantly is how the CI organization is placed within your company. Too many times I've seen it buried down in marketing or in sales, or maybe as a separate entity altogether, that has a very indirect, very long reporting structure into those decision makers around the strategy of the organization. And that is not a good thing. You want to have your function to be as close to these decision makers and ideally reporting directly to these decision makers, so that data drives the intelligence that drives the strategy straight forward. You don't have this lag time around the timeliness factor that we talked about. So I think you need to look at it holistically. If you're getting resources, man, that's awesome. I'm super excited about that. Send some my way too if you can. No, I'm kidding. But that's a step in the right direction. That at least is recognizing your leadership is understanding the importance of having an intelligence community, and we just need to make sure we can build off of that. And you can deliver off of that. You got to deliver your content as a must-have, not a nice-to-have. You don't need the 40-slide presentations. You need the two-slide action list that's really going to change your company, and you have those 40 slides in your back pocket. So that's the sort of context you have to really put it in place.
Always focus on impact.
Yeah.
Right. So thanks for that, Paul. Thanks for these questions. I know there's lots of other ones coming in, but we will be addressing them by email. It is something that we made sure of in the beginning, right before entering that webinar. Okay, we'll deal with those questions. So don't be worried. We will be coming back towards you. And if we're not, or we will be answering them by mail, but I'm sure, and as Paul said, there'll be loads of topics addressed at Intellicon. And I'm sure that by plugging in, you will be learning tons more. By the way, I will be highly suggesting that you become a member of SCIP because it is a must.
Thank you.
Part of the intelligence community. And by the way, Paul, I had my last question for today, but do you have any seats left to attend Intellicon now? I know it's in 10 days. So how can people register if they're interested from now on?
Yeah, you can certainly register. Simply go to scip.org and there's the registration content right there. If you have group registration requirements, get a hold of me. We offer significant discounts in that space. And again, this is a forum. I don't want to say a conference. I talk about it as more of a forum, more of a consortium. I want to throw that word out there for all the people listening. A consortium of thought leadership, and I think what you're going to see. Starting off in this event and certainly in the events after this is that bringing together those key subject matter experts and thought leadership in a consortium fashion across many different disciplines that will expand the intelligence reach out there. So to your point, though, Paula, around the registration elements, yes, we're always welcome to have more and more people come and attend. This is going to be one of our larger ones we've had in the most recent years in terms of registration. So I'm very pleased around that. But by all means, feel free to register and get in there. And I'd love to have a one-on-one discussion with you folks in Arizona. So thank you for mentioning that, Paula.
Great. Well, the more the merrier, as I always say. But congratulations on those record figures for this edition. Before we leave, any last words for our audience today, Paul?
Yeah, well, again, it's been an unbelievable pleasure and partnership with you and your organization, and I really welcome the folks who have joined us. Feel free to link in with me, ask me questions offline. I'm always available for that. I love these discussions, so I'm more than happy to have these sorts of conversations with anybody on the phone. Perfect.
Thanks, Paul. The pleasure was massively shared on my end. It was great to give that interview today and share all that knowledge with the attendees we had on that webinar. And I can't wait to see what you will be discussing and focusing on and what the outcomes will be from that Intellicon that you will be having in 10 days. So thanks again. I wish you all a good day and well, good luck in all your intelligence endeavors to come.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.